What's going on, everyone? Welcome to the Best Books Podcast, an Orchard Hill Church podcast that helps you choose your next book. In this world, there's so many different books that we could read, and frankly, just not enough time. So many recommendations we get every single week of books that we should read, but there's just not enough time to read all of them. And so we want to create a platform and a resource that helps put better resources, better books into your hands. And we really do hope and pray that this helps you grow in your discipleship journey and your spiritual formation. Please welcome to the show for episode 9, someone who cares deeply about the truth and deeply about students. Please welcome to the show for episode 9, Student Ministry Zone, Devin Kelly. Devin, how's it going?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you feeling being on the Best Books podcast?
You know, I feel so excited about it. This is my first podcast ever, so pretty excited.
Yeah, Devin, you started
best one.
earlier this year. You started, and I would say we became friends very quickly because I think
So quickly.
I'm the young adults director, and so I already knew Devin a little bit. But I remember it was when you were going through that systematic theology book that I knew, or I guess it was Bible Doctrine by Wayne Grudem, that I thought, man, this person really cares about the truth, really cares about theology. So why don't you just tell us about that? How has your love for God's Word sort of grown in the past year as you've read that book?
Oh, yeah. So it's really sparked my just curiosity for theology and, like you said, just knowing the truth and then also how to get that information to other people, specifically the next generation. That's really what I'm passionate about and what I feel like God's really put on my heart. So it's really been a very useful tool in that way. And yeah, I really enjoy it.
Yeah. Do you ever feel tempted to talk to your students, these like middle school, high school kids, about such a lofty topic like systematic theology, or do you have to kind of bring it down to their level?
Yeah, ever since I started studying that, I would be lying if I said that I didn't like talk over their head sometimes, and I don't like that I do that, but sometimes I'll catch myself and I'll be like, oh my gosh, I should not be talking about this right now. I need to go back to the original point. Yeah.
Totally. Very cool. Well, thanks again for coming on. Before we get started with our topic, why don't you just tell us a little bit about yourself? Start with tell us about your family and how you sort of came to this place where you're on staff here at Orchard Hill Church.
Yeah, so my family growing up, we didn't really attend church regularly. I did grow up in a Christian home, but that wasn't a huge part of our household, our family. But my parents did with what they had and what was available with them or to them. And basically, I can say nothing but just it was God's sovereignty and just the fact that He's put things in my path to lead me here. I had super passionate beliefs for the wrong things at certain points in my life, and really just through His sovereignty, He's just guided my passions to the right place and provided me with those people to be able to help get me to church. And a big part of that was during the COVID pandemic, whenever I was watching YouTube videos, because that's all I was able to do at that time.
Right.
But yeah, it's just, it's amazing just kind of what God did and that I'm here now. So I'm very grateful.
Yeah, very cool. And I think before you were even, working here with the student ministry, you were volunteering with the student ministry. So how did that transition go? What was that like to go from sort of just, did your relationship change at all with the students, or to them was it like, well, Devin is Devin, she's the same person, Or do you think they knew a little bit that, oh, I work here now, it is different?
Yeah, it was a cool conversation to have, especially with the girls, and I lead a small group here as well, and transitioning from volunteering to now being on staff, they said, does this mean that we get to see you less or more? And I said, well, probably about the same, but if anything, maybe more. And they were like, oh my gosh, that's great. So that was really cool. It's really cool that I get to be a part of that and just, now I have this different role in supplying different events and programs for them, and being a part of that process has been very cool. So yeah, I've loved that transition.
Yeah, I think that's really cool, and I think that speaks to what healthy organizations do is they bring people up who are already familiar with it, already familiar on a volunteer basis, and just that natural next step. I think that leads to a much more seamless transition than if bringing someone in totally cold if they didn't know anything about the students, didn't know anything about how the ministry works. So why don't you tell us a little bit about what you enjoy about student ministry, and then maybe any specific challenges that you face?
Yeah, what I enjoy the most, honestly, is just meeting students where they're at. It can sometimes feel like student ministry is a missions field. You are going into, the lives of these students. You're meeting them where they're at, and you don't expect them to meet you where you are. As I'm the adult, I am going into their territory, and I'm asking about their lives, and I'm bringing God to them. With my knowledge and my experience in my life and what He's given me, and I'm not expecting them to enter into my world. So that's been, it was definitely a challenging dynamic to figure out as well at the beginning, but it's become one of my favorite things to just get down to their level, metaphorically speaking. And sometimes physically. These kids are pretty short. And that says a lot because I'm short, but but some of them are pretty short, But yeah, and I'd say that's also the challenge as well. But if you're willing to take up that challenge, I think it's definitely very rewarding. So.
Do you think anyone could do student ministry, or does it take a certain kind of personality or a desire to be with that age group?
I think that student ministry gets a lot of bad rap. I remember whenever I started volunteering, people were like, oh, you have to be a special kind of person to be in student ministry. And that's true to some extent, in the sense that you need to be able to be called into anything. I would not be able to be on the tech team just because I don't have a passion for it. That's not the way that I don't have that drive. I don't have the skill set or the knowledge. Like, God hasn't given that to me. And I think it's kind of, that can be translated across multiple ministries and ways of serving God and His people. So, but to answer your question, yes, but I think it's not more so than any other area, really, just different.
Yeah. Do you enjoy the silly, I guess not silly, but the largely fun activities like the Color Wars days? I know you guys do that stuff throughout the year. Have you always enjoyed that, or is that like, oh, I hate getting messy?
I am not a very big fan of getting messy or anything like that, but I am actually a big fan of being silly. I was saying last night to my small group girls, I am in my silly goose era. So, it's very cool to be able to participate in that in a way that will, help the students understand who God is, and that people love them and see them and care about them. So it's cool, yeah.
Yeah, one last question before we transition to the book. I think one awesome aspect of this podcast is we have many different people from many different aspects of the church on, and so I'd love to just give you an opportunity if there was someone listening or watching who had available time, and especially on a Sunday morning, like how do you go about sort of challenging, encouraging someone to step into student ministry?
Yeah, I would say, and it's actually talks about in this book, but student ministry is important to understand and know and care about. If you are, actually a youth minister or pastor, if you're a youth, or like if you're a Christian teacher, or if you're a parent. But even I would go beyond that, the next generation is who's going to decide what our world looks like in the next couple of years. And making sure that they have that strong and firm foundation in Jesus is so crucial to having the type of world that we would want them to have. That we have to first supply them with that to the best of our abilities. So.
Yeah, awesome. I think youth ministry, student ministry, whatever you want to call it, is more comprehensive than people often give it credit for. I think sometimes we think of it as sort of a side ministry. Well, that's fine, but it's just for an age group, so we shouldn't invest that much into it. But you're right. I mean, it might be a minority of people in the church if you were talking percentages, but everyone grows up at some point, and so that
true.
laying that foundation is incredibly important. I think that's a great transition to our topic at large today, is that Devin and I will be talking about a book called So the Next Generation Will Know, Preparing Young Christians for a Challenging World by Sean McDowell and J. Wallace. This book is sort of self-described as a how to explain what is true book. And really all that means is the authors not only want to tell you what is true, but they want to give you the tools as the reader to be able to actually go forth and do it. Specifically, this book is about how to equip student ministry leaders to pass on their faith to the next generation. Devin, you've already touched on sort of how what is important about student ministry, but what's been your journey with apologetics with student ministry, and why do you think that's important?
Well, apologetics is actually a very important part of even my testimony and how I came to Christ. I wanted to understand that I knew that it was true, as in Christianity, that was true before I devoted my life to it. And that's really helped me be better equipped to be able to answer really tough questions that students are gonna have. And, being able to answer those is really helpful. One thing that I really love about this book is the authors are pretty well-known Christian apologists, and the main focus of this book is not necessarily the head knowledge and what you can learn about Christianity and how to, debunk some myths from the other side, but it's about how to take that knowledge and, like you said, give it to the next generation. That's the main focus. So it's just a very practical book. There's a lot of practicality to it, and I love that. They give you steps along the way, and so that's been it.
You mentioned these writers are pretty well known. Can you tell us anything more about who they are and what perspective they're writing from?
Yeah, it's really fascinating to me, actually. So Sean McDowell is one of the writers, and he is a professor at Biola University, and his experience with youth is he was also a Christian high school teacher at a Christian school. And J. Wallace, he is also a very well-known cold case detective. And actually, the way that I came across him was I was a criminal justice major, so it was so random. I saw a book called Person of Interest. I thought it was just about criminal justice, so I picked it up. And it was a book about Christian apologetics. So his perspective is very interesting, and he brings that, the criminal justice world into this a lot. So it's very helpful, in my opinion. Gives a really cool perspective.
Is J. Wallace on kind of the short list of yours of if you could sit down with any author that you've ever read?
Oh my gosh, absolutely. I would definitely want to sit down with him, yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. How would you explain this book to someone? Like if someone was interested in reading a book like this, how would you sort of say, like, what's the central point that the authors are trying to make?
Yeah, I'd say the central point that so helped me was knowing that you know what you know and being able to pass that on to the next generation. That is a part of ministry, but it's a big part, but it's just a part. And another huge part of it is loving them and seeing them and meeting the next generation where they're at. I mean, that's the chapters in the book all start with the word love. And I think that's a very unique thing to see from, like I keep saying, two apologists who, it's kind of the assumption there's it's going to be a heady book, but it really is. It's all about just loving them and loving them well with the knowledge of Christianity. So
Yeah, I was about to say, I think that's in most apologetics books, I think that's like a missing component of is the love piece. I think that's a good point to transition us into sort of talking about the structure of the book and how the authors make their case. They break it down into two parts. Part one is "Do you love me?" and part two is "Will you show me?" The first four chapters are love responds, love understands, love relates, and love equips. And then in the "Will you show me?" part, it's love ignites, love trains, love explores, and love engages. And so just like any good author, they're sort of laying that foundation in the first four chapters. And then in chapters 5 through 8, that's really, if you're someone like Devin, that's really what you came for, is like, okay, actually show me how to show them. And I'm sure they give a ton of practical and helpful things in this book.
Oh, yeah.
Devin, what's one or two of the most helpful chapters you found in this book? Do you remember as you read through it, any of them stick out?
Yeah, I think the two chapters that helped me personally the most and stuck with me was the first chapter, where it really just set up the why and why this all matters. You get a lot of statistics, but they are statistics that really matter. It shows, where this generation's at, what they think about the Bible and God and the culture today, just based on surveys that have been done. So that just really sets up the why this book even matters. So that's done really well. And then Love Trains, that book or that chapter is just so practical. It talks about, different strategies to have whenever you are passing on this knowledge, and brings up the idea of taking students to conferences and, just different message series that you can do as a youth pastor. It even gives layouts in the appendix, which is so helpful. So if you feel like you're starting from square one, that's such a great chapter, I think, to read and to help you in the right direction.
Yeah, you and the rest of the student ministry, you are actively getting to know this generation. I would say more than anyone in the church, you guys could probably write a dissertation on how Gen Z thinks and acts and what they value. I'm curious, from your perspective, what do you think is the greatest challenge in sort of not only evangelizing, but discipling and even equipping Gen Z?
I would say probably apathy. I mean, a lot of students nowadays, I think, either are apathetic towards faith or they seem apathetic, and then that can be really discouraging for small group leaders or, just volunteers in student ministry. That they seem like, or that they actually are apathetic is just a real challenge, in my opinion.
Yeah, totally. Do you think that apathy is a general apathy, or do you think it's specifically about faith?
I don't think it's a general apathy, because if you look at what's been going on the past couple of years, I mean, you can see, especially Gen Z, is very passionate and zealous about a multitude of different topics and areas of just public life. For example, just politics, or even, are you Team Conrad or Team Jeremiah? I mean,
No idea what that means.
It's all right. It's fine. Boomer. No, just kidding. I'm sorry. No, but I mean, it's just, there's so many issues that students are so passionate about, and I think the main thing is that just in general with the church entirely, not just Orchard Hill, but I think students are having a hard time understanding why it's so important. And I think that, it's definitely more than we can do. We have to also rely on, God and His ability to, like I was talking about earlier, kind of sovereignly give that information to the students through us. It's not by our own power. But yeah, I think it's just general confusion on what they should be passionate about. It's not directed in the right place. So that would be my take.
As I read through the book, I was incredibly challenged by the lengths that the writers were going to actively equip the students to the point where they were going to college universities and these high schoolers were evangelizing to these college students. I thought that was a really, that picture really sticks in my brain when I think of this book. And I'm going to be honest with you, as I read through that, there's kind of a cynical part of you that's like, man, is that realistic? Like, is this just for the Sean McDowells and the J. Warner Wallaces of the world? Like, is that a realistic standard for like your everyday student ministry? Because I think we can relate. Like, we get a hard enough time getting people to care for themselves, let alone for them to then go out and share. So, what do you think about that? Do you think that's a realistic goal, or do you think that's after decades of building that foundation? What do you think?
Yeah, so I definitely, whenever I read that, I was very challenged as well, and I felt very discouraged. And okay, how do I get to that point with students? How, they can feel so comfortable sharing their faith that they would actually even show up for something like that. But one thing that I've really noticed is whenever you start to just use baby steps and just put apologetics kind of subtly into maybe the curriculum, or bring up an argument from a skeptic in your small group or something like that, and have students think about it. Those small steps really do go a long way, and I've been really encouraged by that, and I do think that the more small steps we do that can lead to something like that. It doesn't have to be tomorrow that we're sending our high schoolers to college campuses. In fact, it shouldn't be. In that chapter, he talked about how there was, I think he said, 8 weeks of training that they went through in order to do that. They went through apologetics courses, basically, through the church. So, just laying that groundwork, making sure whenever they're confronted with those tough questions, because they inevitably are, they don't have to go onto a college campus for that. They will be confronted with that. And just laying that groundwork so that they can, at the very least, their knee-jerk reaction isn't to deconstruct their faith after they hear something that sounds very compelling from a skeptic.
Yeah, it's almost like we have to give them the things that they're going to inevitably hear, and give them the tools to, okay, this is how to sort of think this through. And I'm sure that's tough because you don't want to think for them. I think Gen Z in particular would very much resist that. But you want to be able to give them the tools of, hey, I'm not thinking for you, but I'm just giving you the tools to give both sides of the issue. Because anytime you see a YouTube short or a TikTok, I mean, they're going to be coming from one specific perspective. Their agenda is not to give you both equal perspectives.
For sure.
What I loved earlier about you sharing a little bit of your story is that you highlighted God's sovereignty, and we know that in the life of every person, in the life of every student, God is the one who does the work, inevitably. We can really labor as much as we can with apologetics. We can know all the right answers, and yet, at the end of the day, it's a matter of the heart. And so, my last question on this topic would be, as you think about these students, you fast forward even the middle schoolers into graduation, what would you consider to be like a win? Like, what would you love if you could control all reality, and to say, this is what I want for you as a student to know and to cherish and to love as you graduate?
So I think there's a couple things that I would want them to know, and know super well, which is that they can give a good defense for their faith, and they don't have to be a Sean McDowell or a J. Warner Wallace to do it. That it just requires you to think about things and expose yourself to different ideas, and that's not scary. That you can know why you believe what you believe, and you should be able to articulate it, because if you can't, why do you believe it? So that's the first thing. And the second thing after that would be that the reason that we know these things is so that we can follow a God that loves us and cares about us even more than we love and care about ourselves. And that he actually does want what's best for us. And we can trust that because we know what we know, and we know that we know it. And that there is adequate evidence for Christianity and backing that up.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I'm glad you're so passionate about the subject. I think the students are really lucky to have a student ministry staff that not only love them, but love them enough to dive into this. Is this a book that you guys would consider, making it a read for your volunteers? Who is this book for? Thinking more Orchard Hill specific.
Yeah, I actually, when I read this, I was starting, to volunteer in small groups. Me and my co-leader were just really struggling how to lead a small group with 6th grade girls, and we love them, but they're crazy and, full of energy. So I read this as a volunteer, and it helped me so much then and also in my role now. So I would definitely recommend this to any volunteer in student ministry, any youth worker or youth minister, and just to any parent who wants their child to know Christian values. And yeah.
Yeah, if you handed this to just an average person on a Sunday morning and they actually followed through and read it, what do you think they'd be surprised by what they learn about Gen Z or what they learn about the nature of student ministry?
Yeah, well, I think that this book is so valuable. I mean, you said that you were the young adult pastor, and I'm Gen Z. So, this can even translate to some of these statistics could be for you as well. So it can be helpful in some respects. But yeah, I think just in general, I think it's a good read on, how to love people well where they're at, and just help them understand who God is and that he loves them. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's where a bulk of the value of this book is. And I think we could talk about this for 30 more minutes, but unfortunately, it's really all the time that we have. We've been talking with Student Ministries' Devin Kelly about the book, So the Next Generation Will Know. Sean McDowell and J. Warner Wallace would highly, highly recommend this book if you're a parent, a youth pastor, a Christian teacher, all the above. Really hope you've enjoyed our conversation. If you like this episode, be sure to subscribe to Orchard Hill Plus for more podcasts just like this from Orchard Hill Church. If you really like this episode, we'd love for you to write a review on Apple Podcasts, or if you're watching this on YouTube, by leaving a comment. Your reviews and comments really do help more people find podcasts just like these. Please join us in January for our next episode of Best Books. This has been Best Books. Until next time.